My mother-in-law is naturally frugal and insists on making life harder than it needs to be. When temperatures hit 40 degrees, instead of using the air conditioner, she insisted on going to the riverbank to cool off, and nearly drowned when she lost her footing. She refused to use the flush toilet, walking 10 kilometers daily to public restrooms to collect water for flushing, and ended up breaking her leg on a slippery road. I've repeatedly advised my mother-in-law not to make life unnecessarily difficult, to prevent them from suffering avoidable hardships due to their love of enduring hardship. I regularly help them clean out their refrigerator and remotely turn on their heating and cooling systems, but my mother-in-law held a grudge against me because of this. When we went out traveling, she stuffed 2 buns into my hands. Soon after I finished eating them, I was seized with unbearable stomach pain and knelt on the ground begging them to take me to the hospital, but my mother-in-law just laughed and said, "Stop pretending, you were eating so happily just now, you're definitely just trying to slack off." After saying their piece, the family left without looking back. By the time they returned, 3 days had passed and I had long missed the optimal window for treatment. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the eve of the trip, this time. Since my mother-in-law loves to suffer, I'll let her suffer to her heart's content. My mother-in-law's birthday happened to coincide with the National Day holiday. My husband suggested the whole family take a trip to Xinjiang, and my father-in-law and sister-in-law clapped in agreement. My mother-in-law was so delighted her face turned red, and finally the whole family looked at me, seeing that I wasn't saying anything. My husband frowned. Of all virtues, filial piety comes first. My mom gave birth to me and raised me through thick and thin. What's wrong with the whole family going out to have some fun and relax on my birthday? I was definitely the villain in my past life, because I know my mother-in-law's ways. My mother-in-law is extremely frugal and loves to make herself suffer unnecessarily. Despite her husband's considerable income, he bought them a house with a yard in the neighborhood. Within a month, the yard was piled high with cardboard boxes and plastic bottles. With over 20 chickens and ducks kept in the corner, they ate pickled radish and cabbage every meal, and regularly went out to dig for wild vegetables or collect vegetable leaves. Occasionally, she calls them over for dinner. The next day's leftovers end up in the mother-in-law's freezer, and when asked about it, she says she can't bear to eat them, saving them for New Year's. 1. Sometimes I take her out to nearby places for fun and buy her beef noodles. I don't know what's in her bowl, but she slurps a few noodles with an expression of agony as if she's eating poison, then stops abruptly and refuses to eat any more. This time we're going on a long trip to Xinjiang. I wonder how much trouble she'll cause. Based on this, I strongly oppose it, but unfortunately my opposition is ineffective. The moment my mother-in-law sheds a tear, everything becomes my fault. To make my mother-in-law happy, I was forced to endure hardships with her, instead of staying in a proper hotel. She insisted on going to a youth hostel dormitory. We didn't go to restaurants, but ate the stale meat buns she brought on the roadside. My husband and his family were quite sly. They claimed to be lost but actually slept in a soft king-size bed, claimed to go for a walk but actually went to have a private meal. As a result, only I suffered food poisoning, was hospitalized for 3 days, and ultimately died from liver failure. My mother-in-law was still utterly baffled. How could it be poisoned? I kept it in the freezer. How could it have gone bad? That pig was raised by my own hands. I couldn't even bear to eat it myself, and gave it all to her. The year my mother-in-law sold off her last batch of pigs, my husband was still in elementary school. Thinking of this, I forced a smile. Of course I support it. It's such a rare occasion for mother-in-law's birthday. We should definitely go out and have a great time, but with our big family. It's going to cost a lot of money. A single plane ticket costs 1,500 yuan. We might as well drive ourselves. Before National Day, toll fees are waived, and charging an electric car is incredibly cheap. Doesn't mother-in-law love to rough it? Then let's do it the hard way. I love eating bitter melon, and this time, I'll make sure your whole family gets to eat their fill. My mother-in-law praised me for being clever after hearing this. My husband wasn't happy about it. He only trusts himself when driving on the highway. This is a trip to Xinjiang. After all, if he drives alone, won't he be exhausted? Just as he was about to speak, I immediately cut him off. Honey, it's your mom's birthday. Can't you just let her be happy for a moment? My mother-in-law's eyes sparkled with tears of emotion. You're the one who's truly filial. Hearing this, My husband had nothing left to say. I suppressed a smirk and feigned concern as I spoke. I heard the food at the service area is really expensive, and who knows if it's clean or not. Grandma slapped her thigh. I have lots of buns in my freezer. Take some, don't know if the hot water is clean or not. Bring the thermos. I heard hotels have all kinds of bacteria. Bring the sheets and blankets. Husband couldn't hold back. Why bring so much stuff? We're just going out to have fun, not going on a trip. The sister-in-law also looked very unhappy. She's still waiting to take photos for social media check-ins. Going out like this, looking like we're fleeing a disaster. How can we possibly get any good shots? Bringing so much stuff, the car's going to be completely packed. Going out to eat steamed buns and boiling our own water. Are you crazy? Husband took a deep breath. Yes, Mom, don't worry, Ivy and I have money in hand. The most important thing when we're out having fun is to enjoy ourselves. Just don't bring all that stuff. And leave everything to Ivy to handle. In my past life, I spoke up and ended up becoming the villain. They, on the other hand, hid away nicely and played the role of devoted children. In this life, I won't speak up, and now he's panicking, even trying to drag me down with him. Nice try. Oh my God, I covered my mouth, shocked and heartbroken. Mom devoted her whole life to this family, never spending money on herself, never buying nice clothes, and in the end, she's still seen as the villain in your eyes. All she wanted was to save you more money. How is that a crime? Don't forget, Mom is the one celebrating her birthday here. Whoever's birthday it is gets to make the decisions. Just this once, let's do everything Mom wants. Is it so hard to make her happy? The mother-in-law widened her eyes, tears welling up at the corners. Clearly, these words struck a chord with her. Everyone else's faces, however, darkened as if smeared with soot from the bottom of a pot, each glaring at me with murderous intent. Glare all you want, but for the rest of my life, whoever opposes my mother-in-law, I'll oppose too. With this backing, my mother-in-law grew even more confident and righteous. Is it my birthday or yours? Don't I even have the freedom to celebrate my own birthday? I've worked hard to raise you all these years. And this is how you repay me. My husband Hugh hung his head in silence. To be honest, I married my husband Hugh back then, first, because he was truly outstanding, an executive at a major company, while I was just a university professor. In social terms, you could say I married up. Second, because he seemed so filial. I figured a filial man couldn't be all bad, but after dying once, I realized it wasn't real filial piety, it was just outsourcing his sense of duty. Whenever his mother insisted on suffering needlessly, he dragged me to the front lines to take the heat while he escaped through overtime work. If I have to live this life again, I must make the whole family suffer alongside her. Under my arrangements, the mother-in-law and Hugh each gave in a little. The mother-in-law got Hugh's card and took full charge of planning this trip, on the condition that she promised Hugh they wouldn't choose a road trip. 2. After the negotiations ended, Hugh was mentally exhausted and went home with me. He didn't even wash up, just sat on the couch watching TV and fell asleep. He didn't know that as soon as we left the house, my mother-in-law had already started working enthusiastically. On the day we were set to leave, my mother-in-law called us over to help her with her luggage. 2 32-inch suitcases were packed to the brim, with 3 bulging woven bags beside them, the shapes of pots, bowls, and utensils faintly visible. Yvette, the sister-in-law, was speechless. Brother, sister-in-law, you'd better talk some sense into Mom. How is she supposed to get all this stuff on the plane? The mother-in-law wiped the sweat from her forehead and said with a beaming smile, we don't have to fly, do we? I changed it to a train ticket. Hugh was incredulous, his tones suddenly rising. You got my plane ticket refunded. The mother-in-law's face showed signs of unease. This won't do. I quickly stepped forward and took the mother-in-law's arm. It's cancelled. So what? Why are you shouting? Can't our mom even have a peaceful birthday? That's not what I meant. All right, enough talk. Let's get to the train station first. Hugh, the most important thing in life is being filial. Seeing Hugh suppress his anger, I laughed. That's right, be a bit more filial. No one understands filial piety better than I do. Yvette, seeing that Hugh didn't object either, had no choice but to give up despite her reluctance, though she secretly winked and whispered to me, sister-in-law, when we get there, let's go have fun by ourselves. Don't worry about them. Yvette is adept at reading the room and switching sides. She's friendly with whoever offers her benefits. In my past life, I asked her several times to reason with her mother, but not only did she ignore me, she turned against me and accused me of being unfilial. Later, after I died from food poisoning, she told my parents that I was unfilial to the elderly, gluttonous and lazy, that I sneaked food and met a miserable death as retribution. This time, she actually expects me to take her out and have fun, dream on. I gave a meaningful smile, and just as she thought I was about to agree, I spoke up. Yvette, you're already 18, a legal adult. You can't always be thinking about yourself. We're here today to celebrate Mom's birthday, so for the rest of this trip, everything revolves around her. Her word is law, and we're going to make sure Mom gets to experience the royal treatment fit for an empress. Yvette's face turned pale inch by inch. Hugh nodded in agreement. Yvette, you should learn from your sister-in-law. The mother-in-law beamed with radiant joy and smug satisfaction, but she frowned hard, pretending to be uncomfortable. I don't need anything. As long as everyone eats well and has fun, I'm satisfied. In my past life, whenever I heard these words from my mother-in-law, I would feel very sorry for her. Looking back now, she was clearly using her suffering and hard work to make others feel guilty, thereby better controlling them and making them submit to her will. The whole family fell silent, because the luggage was simply too much and too heavy. The train station was crowded with people, most carrying big and small bags, but compared to our family's luggage, theirs was nothing but a drop in the ocean, due to the excessive amount of luggage. We ended up having to pay a substantial extra baggage fee. Finally found a spot. The whole family was stunned again. We thought at least it would be a hard sleeper or something, but it turned out to be a standing ticket. Mom, how did you end up buying a standing ticket? Hugh's voice cracked. Yvette also wore a long face. It takes 2 days to get to Xinjiang. Do you expect us to stand until we drop on the train? No wonder you were being so secretive and wouldn't tell us anything beforehand. She had just finished hauling her luggage and was sweating profusely. Her makeup was smudged and her hair disheveled. Even her originally fragrant clothes now reeked of various breath odors. She practically wanted to jump off the train right away, but her mother-in-law still looked completely innocent. Standing room tickets are only 200 plus per person. Back then, if we took the plane, it would cost one person 500 or 600, and one ticket would be enough for our whole family. Besides, we didn't have such good conditions back then. Forget about standing room tickets. Just having a seat to rest was already great. The whole family squeezed in the aisle. Hugh was someone who paid great attention to his image. At first, he kept himself composed and stood upright, but later he couldn't help but sit on the floor. As soon as I came in, I excused myself and went to the soft sleeper compartment, claiming I had a stomachache. I knew all along that my mother-in-law would cause trouble, so I bought a soft sleeper ticket in advance using my friend's ID. I took out the small blanket from my bag and laid it on the bed, then comfortably lay down to read. When I got tired, I gazed out at the distant scenery. When I figured the time was about right, I went to the corridor to visit Hugh's family and brighten my mood a bit. In the blink of an eye, it was meal time. The attendant pushed the food cart and started calling out to sell boxed meals. To catch the train, everyone got up very early, and with the time lost moving luggage, no one had time to eat. By now they were all starving, and catching the aroma of the food, Hugh immediately raised his hand to buy some. When the old lady asked, a boxed meal cost 30 yuan, she immediately cursed at the attendant for being a robber. A few rotten vegetable leaves and spoiled rice daring to cost 30 yuan. Why don't you just go rob someone? I think you're nothing but a bandit. At your young age, not learning to be good, all you know is exploiting the people. Did you read all your books for nothing? The old lady's voice was sharp and aggressive. Actually, the flight attendant is just a worker selling meals, not the one setting the prices. But she was scolded harshly by the old lady, her eyes red-rimmed. The commotion grew louder, and an older flight attendant came over. With a quick glance, she immediately understood the situation and fiercely pulled the young girl behind her. She pointed at Hugh and started yelling, "What kind of trouble did I think this was? Turns out he can't even afford to eat. If you can't afford to eat, what's the point of taking the train? Might as well get off and beg for food." 3. Look at him, dressed up all fancy but can't even support his own mother, a good-for-nothing in his 30s, shamelessly bullying our young girl. We're train attendants, not your slaves. eat if you want to, nobody's forcing you. The mother-in-law couldn't get her way. Yvette got scolded along with her, and the father-in-law cowered like a quail in the corner, probably used to it by now. The mother-in-law was so angry she started crying. When she saw me at that moment, it was like seeing a lifesaver. I politely stepped in to smooth things over. When the flight attendant learned that the mother-in-law had high blood pressure, she stopped pressing the issue and continued pushing her cart forward. Later, it seemed deliberate. She came by once to sell sausages and instant noodles, then again to sell fruit, cucumbers, and cherry tomatoes. I couldn't help myself and planned to pay out of my own pocket for some. Just as I called over the flight attendant, Hugh stopped me. She hasn't apologized to my mom yet, so even if I starve, I won't eat anything they're selling. Humph, what a principled stance. Yvette was so hungry she couldn't resist buying some, but the flight attendant rolled her eyes and walked away. Bro, what are you doing? Just then, the mother-in-law proudly pulled a bag of buns from her purse, still steaming with warmth. Good thing I brought these buns. Otherwise wouldn't we have been taken advantage of for nothing? 30 yuan each, 5 of us, that's 150 yuan total. It's absolutely outrageous. Everyone was absolutely starving. They grabbed the buns and stuffed them in their mouths, not caring that the buns were still cold with ice crystals. After all, there's no microwave on the train. The elderly woman watched for a while from the side, then took out some sweet potato strips from her bag. You eat the buns, Mom eats sweet potato chips. You go ahead and eat, Mom's not hungry, just make sure you're full. I couldn't help but laugh. I really don't know if she did it on purpose or not. Anyway, seeing that they all ate, I felt reassured. I excused myself by claiming stomach pain and went back to my sleeper compartment for a short nap. By the time I woke up, the phone was practically ringing off the hook. My mother-in-law was completely flustered, her voice tinged with tears. Hugh, he's been pulling through the hallway. Your father-in-law fainted too. Yvette is crouching in the bathroom and won't come out. What should we do? Where did you go? What's wrong with them? What's wrong? What else could it be? Obviously, it's food poisoning. I suppressed a laugh and hurried over, pretending to be concerned. The aisle was already crowded with people, and I almost couldn't squeeze through. According to the passengers on the bus, the young girl was hogging the restroom. The man couldn't find an available toilet after checking several, and finally burst into the pants in his pocket from holding it in so long. The old man ate too much and didn't even have time to vomit before foaming at the mouth and falling into a coma. When I finally squeezed in, I saw the mess everywhere and the flight attendant cleaner with a face ashen like an eggplant. Then I saw Hugh, red-faced down to his neck, too ashamed to face passers-by, so tense and playing dead, yet trembling uncontrollably due to involuntary physiological reactions. Hugh was extremely vain and image-conscious. Even a slight wrinkle on his clothes would drive him to obsessively iron them repeatedly with a steamer. He always checked his appearance before going out, and every trip inevitably included taking some very relaxed and atmospheric photos. Every time we go out together, he's the one constantly staring at his phone, editing photos and posting them to his social media. Now he doesn't need to take selfies anymore, because countless passers-by are holding up their phones. He's probably wishing he could just die and get it over with. I screamed in panic and fright. Hugh, you can't be hurt. You just got promoted to general manager. How can you die on a train? Hugh was so angry his eyelids were twitching. He really wanted to jump up and shut me up, but was even more afraid of facing the mocking looks of strangers. He clutched his face, pretending to have stomach pain, trying to curl up on the ground. I refused to let him get his way, holding his face tightly and crying uncontrollably. The mother-in-law was even more devastated, crying bitterly and then starting to theorize conspiracies. She insisted that the train attendant held a grudge against them for not buying the overpriced boxed meals, deliberately poisoning them by putting something in the boiling water, due to the sudden incident. The train stopped at the nearest station, and the group rushed straight to the nearest hospital. I never had this kind of treatment in my past life. I said I was feeling unwell, and my mother-in-law said I had overeaten and just needed to digest the food. I said I felt like vomiting, and Hugh said it was all in my head. They left me alone at the hotel while they enjoyed themselves for several days. By the time a kind hotel staff member took me to the hospital, the toxins had already spread to my kidneys and couldn't even be filtered out by dialysis. This time they were quite prompt with the rescue. The father-in-law ate too much and became seriously ill, so he was transferred to the ICU. Hugh and Yvette didn't eat much. After having their stomachs pumped, they both received 4 drips and looked very resentful. Upon learning it was food poisoning, they both turned accusatory eyes toward the mother-in-law without prior agreement. The mother-in-law was utterly wronged, her face full of innocence. "Why are you all looking at me? I kept it frozen in the fridge the whole time. How could it have gone bad? How could it cause food poisoning? That was pure, natural, free-range pork with no additives, no pesticides, no hormones. I raised that pig with my own hands. Hugh, you fed it too. Don't you remember? I couldn't even bring myself to eat it. I gave it all to you." Hugh's eyes widened in disbelief. "That was years ago when you raised pigs. You still haven't thrown away those buns." "Why would I throw them away? That's such a waste. These are pigs I raised myself, fed on corn I grew myself. You can't find pigs this good anywhere in the city." The mother-in-law was still defending herself, not feeling guilty at all. Hugh was so furious he nearly fainted, his whole body trembling uncontrollably. The mother-in-law curled her lips and started her pity party again, talking about how hard she had it back in the day. Seeing Hugh's anger gradually fade, I pulled out my phone. Just as I thought, he's pulling. The Huakuan executive couldn't wait and did it right there in the aisle. Regarding this incident of the Huakuan executive taking the train, what should we reflect on? Bombshell. Mother of Huakuan executive complains about expensive meal fees. I showed the trending news to Hugh. Hugh's face gradually darkened, his expression was twisted with rage, anger reaching its peak. "What a waste, what a waste. You're nothing but a waste, Mom. Do you know how much face you've made me lose? Don't you realize how many people are watching my position? Are you determined to turn me into a laughingstock?" The two people, who had always been so loving and dutiful, erupted into a fierce argument for the first time. The mother-in-law stood frozen in place, her eyes instantly brimming with tears. She kept wiping her tears, muttering to herself, "I just wanted to save some money, to leave it to you." This sight made the other patients in the ward feel envious. Hugh was so angry he started smashing the wall. "How much money do you have to leave me? How many times have I told you not to suffer needlessly? Is there something wrong with your brain, or can't you understand simple words?" Hearing this, I walked up and slapped him. "Hugh, you're absolutely terrible. How could you speak to your mother with such a tone?" Just as Hugh was about to explode, he saw his boss and colleague arriving from another province with a flower basket, making the long journey to visit him. Behind them followed blinding flashes of cameras. It suddenly dawned on him that his boss was coincidentally visiting the city with his sworn enemy for an inspection tour. In an instant, his face turned ashen gray. It seemed as though he could foresee his own miserable future. With a long face, he was forced to apologize to his mother-in-law, then mechanically posed for a photo with his boss's sworn enemy like a soulless automaton. "Aren't you supposed to be very filial? This time I'll make you filial enough." Before leaving, the boss didn't forget to remind him to treat the elderly well. "Your salary isn't low. Why are you so harsh on the elderly? Look, what a bad influence this has." As soon as the boss and others left, the mother-in-law took out 2 slightly smelly eggs from her pocket. "Son, eat quickly. This egg is from our own chicken, very nutritious." Hugh pressed his lips together, suppressing his anger. Usually so loving and filial, now it was impossible to keep up the act. He sprang to his feet and snatched the egg, smashing it hard on the ground. "You want me to eat rotten eggs? Why don't you eat them yourself? Mom, are you addicted to playing the victim? Have I ever not given you money? Do I ever deprive you of food or drink? Why do you always put on this act and disgust everyone here?" "Fine, you used to disgust Ivy all the time, but now you've gone too far. You're actually disgusting me now." So Hugh knew all along. I remembered the first time I met his parents. The table was full of leftovers. He said his parents were used to living through hard times and were naturally frugal, telling me not to take it to heart. During the new year, I hosted a family banquet, but his mother insisted on picking out radish bits and cabbage leaves from among all the good dishes to eat in front of everyone, stealing glances at me while eating. He said his mother was used to being overly cautious and asked me to be a little kinder to her. There was also the time she was hospitalized for eating something wrong due to being too frugal, suffered heatstroke trying to save money, and broke her back falling while scavenging. It's all my fault for not being a devoted daughter-in-law. Now that I think about it, he knew his mother was being completely deliberate. After that day, Hugh stopped acknowledging his mother-in-law. He was discharged as soon as he recovered. Yvette was dumped by her wealthy boyfriend because of this video. In a fit of rage, she chose to run away from home, but things went badly for her father-in-law, since her father-in-law's condition was quite serious. And he had just been transferred out of the ICU with great difficulty. The doctor asked her mother-in-law to cook some plain rice porridge to gradually resume eating, for the mother-in-law couldn't bear to throw away the remaining rotten eggs, so she mashed them into paste and cooked them into porridge. Although the father-in-law was rushed to the hospital immediately this time, it was still beyond help. When the father-in-law was buried, the mother-in-law was still wiping her tears in public. "I don't know either. I just thought it was a waste to throw those eggs away. I couldn't help myself." Everyone said the mother-in-law was pitiful, having lived through too many hard days. Let Hugh take good care of his mother-in-law and make sure she lives a good life. Hugh was furious. He brought out years of bank transfer records and laid them down like a madman in front of those people. "I bought her a house, furniture, air conditioning, and a TV. What did I ever do to wrong her? How didn't I give her a good life? You dare ask her how many times she's screwed over my dad. Mom, you did this on purpose, didn't you? You did it intentionally." Under everyone's watchful eyes, the mother-in-law stood frozen for several seconds, then she covered her face and burst into tears. "I'm old now, becoming a burden to everyone. Why didn't you hate me when you were little? Didn't I raise you by being frugal and saving every penny? Now that you're grown up, you start your old mother. My dear, it's all my fault for not being able to eat eggs. Otherwise, I could have gone with you, sparing myself from being while still alive." Hugh's fists clenched visibly, with tendons bulging on his hands and forehead. Finally, he couldn't help but push his mother-in-law. The mother-in-law fell to the ground and refused to get up. Hugh was immediately blamed by everyone, and the video was posted online by someone with ill intent, causing a huge uproar, since only a clip was posted. Netizens didn't know the full context, and only thought he was emotionally unstable and looked like someone who would commit domestic violence. Hugh was cyberbullied, and under the influence of public opinion, he was forced to take a leave of absence. I was also slightly affected by this wave of online harassment. Many people asked if I needed help and advised me to divorce that jerk as soon as possible. In my past life, I was the one who endured all this public scrutiny. In this lifetime, it's his turn. You could say it's karma coming full circle. Hugh was almost depressed at home, crying his eyes out in front of me. "Honey, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. From today on, I don't have that mother of hers. I only listen to you, my wife." I pulled my hand away from his. I looked at him calmly. If this had happened in my past life, I would have turned around and comforted him when he cried to me like this. In his plan, I might solve his problems for him, tell him everything is under my control, and then he would naturally shift the burden of caring for him in old age onto me by playing weak, while he enjoys himself freely outside. Only after I died in my past life did I learn that Hugh chose to marry me entirely because of my quiet and stable personality. With the qualities of a virtuous wife and devoted mother, I am marriageable, and those who are not suitable for marriage, of course, should remain outside the door. To be honest, he doesn't really have any feelings for me either. We're just compatible. Realizing this, I flashed him a brilliant smile. I pulled out a divorce agreement from my bag. Hugh's mouth fell open, his face full of disbelief. "Ivy, wait a moment." He chased after me, and before I slammed the door and left, I let out a scornful, mocking laugh. "Hugh, let's get divorced. It's better for both of us to part on good terms." Hugh was too arrogant, thinking I was just throwing a tantrum, so he readily agreed to divorce me. After all, I've been trying my best to be a good wife all these years, even going through IVF for him because of his oligospermia. In my past life, I didn't realize until after my death that I had actually been pregnant for 6 weeks. After reincarnating this time, I went to the hospital for a checkup right away and had the undeveloped embryo medically aborted. Hugh is such a selfish person. He doesn't deserve to be a father. Before the divorce, I coaxed him into signing a property settlement agreement, stipulating that the RV and house would go to me, and his savings would be split equally between us. He signed with great confidence, even saying he would pursue me again until I recognized him once more. I turned around and sued his mistresses for the return of my marital assets. At that moment, Hugh realized I was serious. He called me a venomous woman, saying I had malicious intentions. Having come to his senses from his scheming, he dropped all pretense and demanded I pay him back. My mother-in-law, hoping to atone for her sins through good deeds, went to the university where I work and secretly found out my class schedule, on purpose, during one of my public lectures. She ran onto the stage shouting at the top of her lungs, plopped herself down, and started crying while slapping her thighs. "Ivy, you heartless witch, you took my son's money and ran off. Is there no justice left? What kind of school is this? Hiring such a conscienceless person? Ivy, my son never did anything to wrong you. Give me back my son's hard-earned money." After all, anyone who saw this scene would. However, I wasn't panicked at all. After all, I majored in art. My eyes lit up as I grabbed my teaching pointer and pointed it at my ex-mother-in-law sitting on the ground. "Look, this is a form of performance art. It's an expression intended to have others meet one's needs through tantrums and rolling on the floor. It's one type of human behavioral diversity, likely stemming from narcissistic levels that differ from the norm, causing them to constantly live under the illusion of being the center of the world. Believing that simply by crying and making a fuss, someone will fulfill their unreasonable demands. Everyone must carefully observe this hard-won sample. Under my guidance, order was restored throughout the venue, and the students below looked at Grandma Chien with evaluative eyes. Suddenly I feel like she's acting so fake. Why all thunder and no rain? Not a single tear. I seem to remember her son is an executive at a big company, quite wealthy. Why does she always dress like this? Could it really be that her son is abusing her? I heard she only eats leftovers at home. Her old man was sent off by her leftovers. The former mother-in-law broke down and ran away, covering her face. A few days later, she made a comeback. This time she changed her banner slogan and knelt at the school gate. I immediately started teaching right there on the street. "Students, look, the performance art is starting again. The Qing dynasty has been gone for so many years. Yet some people's servile nature is even stronger than that of ancient times. What does this mean? It means that when someone has a servile heart, wherever they go and whoever they meet becomes their master." The crowd burst into laughter. No one cared about her so-called grievances. Everyone just laughed at her. To deal with someone who likes to morally blackmail others, you just have to be more immoral than her, and she'll get upset. When she went back that day, her former mother-in-law started threatening suicide. Hugh called, and I immediately transferred him to 120. Later, I found out it was another act of self-harm, hoping to awaken what little conscience I had left. As it turned out, I didn't fall for it, but Hugh was furious. "She's still my mother, for crying out loud. How could you be so heartless as to let my mother die without helping her?" I found it somewhat amusing. "I already called 120. What more do you want? It's as if just because I was ever kind to them, I now owe them for life." I completely cut ties with their entire family. Right around that time, my school announced a study abroad exchange program. I signed up and was accepted, quickly embarking on a 2-year journey of learning overseas. The next time I heard news about Hugh's family was at my first classmates' reunion after returning to China, not long after I left the country. Hugh got married. It was an arrangement made by his former mother-in-law. They say she's even more frugal and hardworking than her previous mother-in-law. At her parents' house, she gets up at 5 a.m. every day to clean the house and cook, working until 12 a.m. before going to bed. I can't figure out what household chores could possibly take a whole day nowadays. Until I came across a private message Hugh sent me the day before her wedding, showing her new wife doing housework. There's perfectly good flour available, but she insists on buying wheat and grinding it herself. We have a washing machine, but she absolutely must wash by hand. There's a mop right there, but she insists on getting down on her knees and scrubbing with a cloth. Just watching her exhausts me. No wonder this work goes from morning till night. Hugh was still smug. "I just want to tell you, don't think the world stopped spinning without you. There are plenty of women in this world who are far better than you." What else could I say? I can only wish him happiness. Unfortunately, one mountain cannot accommodate 2 tigers. 5. Shortly after the couple got married, the new wife and the former mother-in-law began their battle of endurance. While one side washed clothes by hand, the other would gather soap pods and rub clothes by the river in the dead of winter. while one side ate rice mixed with radish. The other would shred radish peels to make soup and soak the rice. Over time, Hugh didn't even dare to go home. Every night, he would insist on taking rideshare back, only daring to return home after they had all fallen asleep. But one unlucky day, Hugh got into a car accident and broke his arm, forcing him to go to the hospital for treatment. The two bitter melons started a competition at the hospital. Today it's shredded radish mixed rice. Tomorrow it's pickled radish skin with rice. After a few days, Hugh was so weak he couldn't even speak. He stumbled out to call for help, and in his panic to avoid those two bitter melons, he fell down the stairs and died on the spot. The two bitter melons stopped suffering and, fearing the other would gain an advantage, began spending extravagantly. Yvette heard the news and came running back with her boyfriend, hoping to get a piece of the action. The three of them ended up in a fierce struggle. After all, Yvette was young and gradually gained the upper hand, snatching away all the bank cards. That very day, she bought a house and a car, spending every last penny. Her thrifty former mother-in-law was so furious that she suffered a stroke. Yvette didn't hesitate for a moment and sent her straight to a nursing home. The new sister-in-law wasn't someone to be trifled with either. She didn't get her money or file a police report. Wherever Yvette went to work, she would go there to cause trouble. Yvette was once again cyberbullied. The internet has a long memory. And it wasn't long before someone dug up her past and exposed her tactics. I almost burst out laughing, faced with setbacks everywhere and dumped again. Yvette harbored deep resentment. With no hope left in life, she chose to take her new sister-in-law down with her. Hearing that they were suffering so much made my heart feel sweet. Finally, they got what they wished for. I couldn't be happier either. Coming back to my senses, I joked around with my classmates and friends, laughing. As if nothing had ever happened, I embarked on a new chapter of my life. Story 2. As the scorching apocalypse descended, my sister feverishly devoured ice-cold lychees to cool off. I warned her that eating too many lychees could lead to a potentially fatal condition known as lychee disease. My mother, showing blatant favoritism, burned me with tongs, leaving no part of my body unscathed, and accused me of not recognizing good things because my life was worthless. That very night, my sister fainted due to lychee disease. My superstitious mother blamed my cursed words for causing my sister's collapse. The family tied me to the balcony like a dog to ward off evil, but it resulted in me being sunburned to death. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day my sister was eating lychees. With a smile, I said, "If sister likes it, that's great. I'll go buy the family several more pounds of lychees." In this new life, I resolved to watch them destroy each other. The wicked grinding down the wicked, under the blistering heat, I used my last ounce of strength to crash against the balcony door. Dehydration over several days had left me unable to utter a complete sentence. Water. My sister stood inside the air-conditioned room wearing a cream-colored fluffy dress, looking like a little princess. Meanwhile, I was chained outside by a dog leash, my skin cracked and peeling, swollen and painful, having not had a drop of water for 2 days. With a sneer, my sister maliciously asked, "You want water?" "Sure, but water is so precious in this heat." "Sister, for the sake of the family, drinking some dog urine shouldn't be a problem, right?" Then, she actually commanded her pet dog Coco, who had been drinking expensive bottled water, to urinate on my face. The foul smell of the dog's urine was deliberately poured over my wounds and face, causing me to fall into the yellow liquid. My biological parents, as if blind to my plight, only cared for my sister. "Oh, Emma, after you're done teasing, put on your sunproof clothing. Don't let our precious daughter get sunburned." My little troublemaker, always bullying your sister. But as long as our Emma is happy, that's all that matters. "Are you hot? Have a bite of mom's homemade lychee ice cream." As I watched the three of them looking like a happy family through the glass door, tears of resentment flowed. My sister was their precious daughter, but what about me? Filled with rage, I madly crashed against the balcony door. Ultimately, I was burnt to death by the terrifying sun of the apocalyptic heat. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing in the kitchen, staring blankly at a package of Wagyu beef. Quickly checking the date on my phone, I realized I had been reborn 3 days before the onset of the scorching apocalypse. My mother, supervising the kitchen, stepped forward and angrily poked my face, saying, "I should have given birth to a piece of barbecue rather than you." I must have lost my real child and kept a brainless placenta instead. If you starve my Coco, I'll cook you instead. Coco, the cursed dog, glared with red eyes, barking and throwing a tantrum by her side. I shrank my neck away from her thick finger pointed at my forehead and forced a sad smile. Mom, I'm allergic to beef. How can I touch it? My mother, impatient and scowling, said, every day it's one allergy or another with you. What a waste. Coco, empowered by my mother's presence, barked at me again, pretending to be scared. I quickly agreed, Mom, don't be upset, I'll get to it right away. But internally, I cooled down quickly. This family of 3, plus their dog, were not worth my sympathy. Enduring the itch and swelling in my hands, I prepared the beef, just as my sister, who had been enjoying the show, walked into the kitchen. Sister, she said with a cheery smile, we're almost out of lychees, go buy some more. Or if Mom finds out you're being lazy and making me unhappy, she'll definitely beat you to death. In my past life, I would have tried to advise her for the sake of her health, but not anymore. I would not be the foolish farmer from the story of the farmer and the snake. I simply nodded and smiled. If sister likes it, that's great, I'll go buy several more pounds right away. Seeing me hastily agree, my sister walked away satisfied. In my previous life, on a scorching hot day, my sister insisted on having lychees. To please her beloved daughter, my mother sent me out in the 40-degree heat to buy lychees. Reluctant, I was locked out of the house, ignored no matter how much I knocked on the door. Only when I returned, drenched in sweat with boxes of premium lychees, was I allowed back inside. In the intense heat, the brutal sun outside left me dehydrated. My sister merely glanced at my sunburnt, peeling skin and indulged herself in the lychees. Weak, I collapsed on the sofa and gently warned her that eating too many fresh lychees at once could lead to lychee sickness, which in severe cases could cause shock or even death. While stuffing lychees into her mouth, my sister rolled her eyes at me. My mother scolded me for speaking ill, cursing me for not deserving good things. In her anger, she heated a pair of tongs until they were red hot and burned me all over. At midnight, after overeating lychees, my sister convulsed and fell into a coma. Landing in the emergency room, my mother slapped me hard, blaming my cursed words for intentionally hexing my sister, causing her strange illness. She even claimed that if I hadn't insisted on taking her to the hospital, a simple prayer at home would have cured her. Now, with the situation serious, she accused me of deliberate sabotage. Blinded by favoritism and superstition, my mother wouldn't listen to my explanations. After beating me half to death, she and the family tied me to the balcony with a dog leash, claiming the sunlight would cleanse the evil from me. Without water or shelter, I barely survived 3 days before succumbing to the extreme heat, dying helplessly on the exposed balcony, watching my sister play with the dog at the dining table. I clenched my teeth. She loved lychees, didn't she? This life, I'll make sure she and the entire family, along with their plague of a dog, get their fill all at once. This time, I don't need my parents to threaten me. I put on some protective clothing, a face mask, and sunglasses, and eagerly drove out to buy lychees. The cicadas were loud by the roadside, and from inside the car, the road seemed to emit waves of heat, distorting everything in sight. But this was just the prelude to the apocalypse. When the real heatwave hit, all life would either die or hide. Concrete would melt shoes, and exposed skin would burn instantly. I needed to find a shelter before the apocalyptic heat arrived. Since I died early in my last life, I didn't know when the catastrophe would end, so I had to stock up on supplies. The bonus from a project completed last year had just been deposited, and before my mother could take it, I used it to prepare. With everything planned, I contacted the owner of the villa across from my house and rented it for 3 months. Leaving the villa, I sped up and drove straight to the largest supermarket in the city. I first stopped at a luxury store on the 3rd floor to buy 2 outfits. Although my job paid well, my mother had swindled all my money under the pretext of saving for a house, diverting it to my sister in various ways. Each month, I barely got by on the meager amount left in my bank account. My sister's room was cluttered with luxury goods, while I had only cheap t-shirts to wear. Looking at my reflection in the mirror, dressed in exquisite clothes, I smiled and told the flattering saleswoman, "Wrap up all the outfits I just tried." I refused to be the family's cash cow any longer. This time, I was going to spend all the money on myself, after spending half the day in the mall. Indulging in beauty treatments I could never afford before, I left feeling pampered. Near the mall was the city's largest wholesale district. I found the biggest shop there and, claiming I needed a continuous supply for a guest house I was opening, got the owner to give me a discount. Out in the world, appearances wield more persuasion, seeing my luxurious bags and clothes, and how casually I ordered 2 large freezers, the owner was convinced. He gladly agreed to a long-term cooperation and offered me the lowest prices. I ordered a water purifier, dozens of bottles of mineral water, 20 cases of my favorite pineapple beer, 20 bags each of rice and flour, 10 cases each of various noodles including spaghetti and snail noodles, as well as instant meals and snacks, self-heating hot pots, and 10 cases of dried fruits. Then I went to the market where I fiercely bargained with the butcher, ordering a total of 20 pounds of fresh pork, lamb, chicken, duck, and goose, and 50 pounds of cured meats and sausages, since I didn't have much money on hand. I only paid a deposit for these items and paid extra for them to be delivered to my home at midnight. I put on the wrinkled white t-shirt I wore out and used a small cart to bring home several boxes of premium lychees. Seeing that I only brought back lychees and not the ingredients for tonight's dinner, my family looked displeased. Over the years, my parents and sister have been living a lavish life off my money, only wanting fresh organic meat, vegetables, eggs, and dairy products. I tried to appease them. I could only carry these few boxes of lychees. I've ordered the vegetables for tonight's dinner from the supermarket, and they should arrive in a few hours. If you're hungry, you can snack on some lychees for now. If that's not enough, feel free to order takeout yourselves. I knew them too well. These leeches would never spend their own money as long as they could use mine. Sure enough, with a cold snort, my mother picked up a box of lychees and placed them on the table, not mentioning the takeout at all. Watching the 3 of them gorge on lychees on an empty stomach, I couldn't help but smile. Go ahead and show off. In my previous life, my sister suffered from a lychee-related illness. It's only fitting that her beloved parents experience it with her this time around, while they were busy eating the lychees. I secretly installed pinhole cameras in the living room and all the bedrooms before returning to the living room with peace of mind. The table, previously filled with lychees, was now bare except for a pile of lychee shells waiting for me to clean up. I scoffed silently. In my last life, I was too naive, spending money and resources wholeheartedly without gaining even a shred of affection from these 3 ingrates and their dog. Why bother? These were newly marketed premium lychees, costing hundreds per pound, yet these ungrateful people didn't leave a single fruit for me. The remaining lychee flesh was taken by my sister and tossed to Coco, our dog, from a glass bowl. Feeling my unwavering stare, my sister made a disgusted face. What's with that look, sis? It makes me want to gouge out those dead fish eyes of yours. Realizing what I was looking at, she arrogantly smiled and flaunted the glass bowl. Want some? No way. I'd rather feed it to the dog than give any to you. My mother was on the floor, offering incense to a household deity, complaining about me as she prayed. My eldest daughter is nothing but cheap and unlucky, always envious of the good things. It's better to feed Coco than to give it to a jinx like her. May the deities bless Emma and Coco with prosperity and long lives. She stood up, making faces at me. Why don't you just go away? You're annoying. I'd heard this rhetoric all my life, ever since business went downhill after my birth. They were convinced I was the cause and sent me away as a nursing baby to my grandmother's, only bringing me back when I was older to serve them like a maid. In my last life, I longed for my parents' love, felt guilty for their blame, and overly compensated them. This life, they still tried to manipulate me with such baseless accusations, as if dreaming, pretending not to care. I sat down next to my mother on the sofa. Mom, didn't you say you really liked this house? This villa was rented under duress by my vain sister and mother, who over the years grew accustomed to luxury and have been pressing me to buy a villa and register it under my mother's name. Meeting my mother's suspicious gaze, I smiled calmly. My bonus from the first half of the year has come through, and together with the money you have, it's just enough for the down payment on this house. Transfer the money to me, and while the property prices are low, I'll buy this house and gift it to you as a present for your 50th birthday. My mother's expression lit up with excitement, as she poked my face threateningly. The property deed has to be in my name, or else, All these years of submission made them think I wouldn't dare to resist. Within just 2 hours, my bank account balance had increased by 2 zeros. After paying the villa rent and the remaining balance for the supplies, I quietly awaited the drama that was about to unfold. As dusk began to set, the good stuff I had ordered was delivered to my home right on time. My sister thought it was food and happily went to open the box, but before her hand even touched the box, she suddenly fainted and began convulsing on the ground. It was the perfect timing for her lychee disease to strike. I felt relieved. The good stuff in the box was a gift I had left for them, meant to take effect at the very end. It would be problematic if it was discovered too soon. Seeing that my parents were also dizzy and weakly collapsed on the sofa, I quickly mimicked them, dropping from the small iron bed with a thud, clutching my head and screaming, "It's definitely evil spirits. Our whole family has been cursed. Mom, come save me." My mother, who was usually very superstitious, always attributed any illness or disaster in our family to evil spirits, and this time was no exception. The first thing she did was not call for an ambulance, but instead she rubbed her hands together, prayed to the gods, and then took out some talisman papers from the drawer under the shrine, burned them to ashes, and sprinkled them into water. She even considered my sister's taste, adding a spoonful of sugar to the water, took a sip herself, and then fed it to my dad and sister. My sister actually woke up after being fed the talisman water. I knew it was the sugar that accidentally saved them, as it was the timely sugar intake that helped, but my mother believed it was a miracle, and she didn't even think of feeding me the talisman water to save me, just kept kneeling in front of the shrine to thank the gods for their blessing. I felt a sense of irony while also finding it amusing. In times of crisis, there really was no place for me in this family. I crawled to the living room, pretending to be weak, took a sip of the talisman water, and then stood up to start spouting nonsense. "Mom and Dad, I read an article recently saying that air pollution has been so severe these years, the air is filled with evil toxins. How about I contact a renovation company to nail our doors and windows shut, and seal the cracks with magical talismans, to keep our home safe from evil spirits?" My parents, who were from the countryside and had only elementary education, nodded in agreement after reading the article I had posted under a pseudonym pretending to be an expert. My sister, uneducated and still semi-conscious, couldn't refute this absurd idea. I immediately contacted a renovation company and sent a large red envelope to have them work overtime to seal all the doors and windows in our house except the main door, using the sturdiest materials to ensure the most robust effect. All the light filtering curtains, window screens, and frosted window films were also removed under my direction, and even the windows were replaced with glass that had the highest light transmittance and the least heat insulation. Looking at the glaringly bright living room, thinking of the sun that could scorch people to death after the apocalypse, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. They liked using sunlight to drive away evil spirits, didn't they? Let them have enough of chasing away the plague dog. Enjoy the sunbath prepared by the eldest daughter who has endured endless bullying. I walked into the cluttered storage room and sat on the small iron bed I hadn't used in 5 or 6 years, laughing at myself. In my previous life, I died a tragic death caught in the whirlpool of my biological family, but in this life, everyone who hurt me will get their comeuppance in the following days. Apart from deliberately taking care of my family weakened by the lychee disease, I was busy using up supplies. Since I was the one paying for all the food and drink, my parents didn't care at all. In the past few days, I madly moved 4 or 5 bags of rice and flour from the house, and I nearly emptied the fridge while moving vegetables before I stopped, seeing that I had moved almost all the supplies. I used the excuse of going to sign the house contract and directly moved into the rented villa. The next day, the blazing sun shone high in the sky, and the temperature soared to an unbearable 50 degrees overnight. I lay sprawled on the sofa on the second floor, overlooking the fully stocked supplies on the first floor, and with the electricity prepaid by tens of thousands, I felt utterly secure, while I closed my eyes and enjoyed the cool breeze of the air conditioner. The villa opposite was nearly in uproar. "I'm dying of heat," my always pampered sister rolled on the living room floor, screaming, "Ah, the air conditioning in the room and living room is broken. I can't live like this." My mother hurriedly soothed her. "My dear daughter, I'll call your sister, that short-lived ghost, to spend money to fix it, and it'll be cool soon." I immediately answered my mother's video call. And she saw my face looking fresh. With my hair being blown by the air conditioning, and her face instantly darkened. "You plagued chicken, it's cool where you are, and you don't even know the air conditioning at home is broken," she accused, lying in a rocking chair. I casually said, "Well, Mom, let me first see the area around the air conditioner to judge the problem, and I'll contact someone to fix it." As the camera moved to the air conditioning wiring, I exclaimed, "Ah, the lines are broken, what happened?" "It looks like it was bitten off by sharp teeth. The only one in our family with such sharp teeth is probably only Coco." My sister, holding the dog, angrily pointed at the camera and said, "It's not like your dog can spit out ivory. Coco is such a good boy. There's no way he would do something like this." I calmly responded, "But it's not like a person bit it, right? No worries. The little dog just doesn't know any better. But with the heat, the repair person won't arrive quickly, so our parents will just have to endure it for a bit." My sister, clearly upset, had no comeback. Dad, already irritable from the heat, snatched the dog from her, inspected it, and indeed found remnants of the wire's insulation in Coco's mouth. "Damn it, I knew this damn dog was trouble. You insisted on keeping it, eats our food, drinks our water, and doesn't appreciate anything. Now it's broken the air conditioner, making me suffer in this heat. I'm going to teach it a lesson today." Furious, he threw the dog out. "Ah!" my sister screamed, "Coco, my baby, you old beast. How dare you throw my son? I'll fight you." The dog was her treasure. Seeing Coco spit out blood and lie weakly on the ground, she bent over, dashed towards our father like a stubborn mule, and knocked him flying. Mom, feeling torn between her husband and daughter, collapsed to the ground, crying and throwing a tantrum. "A whole family, none of you give me peace. What sins have I committed? O Lord, the elders oppress me, the young ones make trouble, and my old man, he loses his temper and hits people." I munched on my chips, laughing so hard at the drama unfolding on the surveillance camera that my stomach hurt. Before leaving, I had smeared meat juice on the air conditioner wires to entice the dog to chew through them, killing two birds with one stone. As time passed, the thick clouds in the sky gradually dispersed, and the temperature rose even higher. They waited for hours in the well-ventilated living room for the air conditioning repair person. But instead, they faced the brutal assault of the sun's ultraviolet rays at the peak of high temperatures. By noon, with no curtains to block it, sunlight filled the entire villa. My sister, dressed the coolest, was the first to suffer sunburns, her pampered skin immediately blistering. Our parents' faces turned as red as a monkey's butt, covered in red patches. The family, usually close-knit, was now fighting over a tiny spot of shade in the living room. This spectacle of villains grinding down each other had only just begun. At the peak of the sunlight, I drew the expensive blackout curtains I had bought, blocking the harsh ultraviolet rays. I leisurely fetched a large, juicy watermelon from the freezer. Each bite was refreshingly cool. I continued to watch the surveillance while eating. Now, the sunlight was so fierce that a few seconds of exposure would cause blisters. Watching my parents and sister turn red and suffer was indeed a sweet revenge. When I originally chose my room, they took all the rooms with good light and large windows for themselves and the dog, leaving me a tiny, windowless storage room. Now, because of the scorching sun and lacking any form of shade since I had removed all the curtains, they, along with their sick dog, had no choice but to cram into the tiny storage room. Indeed, what goes around comes around. I bit into the juicy, ice-cold watermelon, relishing their discomfort from the heat. Feeling even sweeter inside, while I was enjoying this, my phone rang again. After answering, it was my mother, berating me fiercely. "You worthless girl, where have you disappeared to? Weren't you supposed to get someone to fix the air conditioner? Where are they, and the curtains in the house? Come back and hang them up." I replied with a smile, "I'd love to, but the housing office here is really considerate, caring more about my well-being than even my parents because of the heat alert. They won't let me leave. They have ample air conditioning here, and they even provide meals and lodging." Mom retorted, "Who are you cursing at? I gave birth to you, raised you, and this is how you repay me, you ungrateful daughter. I'll complain to your company and your leaders, ruin your reputation and see how you live." Threatening me has always been her way since I was young. I used to be genuinely afraid, worried that she would indeed make a scene at my school or workplace. ruining all my efforts in the first half of my life, so I always treated her with utmost respect and abeyance. But having died once, I discovered, all external things are insignificant compared to oneself. I sneered, "Mom, try to survive first, then talk tough to me." Then I hung up the phone. No matter how much they bombarded my phone afterwards, I wouldn't pick up again. On the third day of the extreme heat wave, the temperature continued to rise, reaching as high as 60 degrees Celsius. I woke up in a room chilled to 16 degrees, wrapped in an air-conditioned blanket. While preparing a snail noodle hot pot, I habitually watched the security cameras. My parents, severely dehydrated, typically lay gasping on the ground, but my sister, who had been the sickest just a few days earlier, was spiritedly rummaging for supplies indoors. Something felt off. So I immediately zoomed in on the surveillance footage for a closer look. Sure enough, in the corner of the storage room, I spotted an abnormality, a pile of bloody skeletons and white fur adorned with Coco's usual luxurious blue bow collar. In the camera, my sister's eyes gleamed menacingly, and dried blood stained her lips. The answer was self-evident. I scoffed, feeling nothing but contempt for her. After all, that doomed dog, though dead by the hand of its beloved owner, had been a tool for oppressing me and was not worthy of my sympathy. 2 days later, the water barrel in the storage room was almost empty. My father's cheeks were sunken, and he lay sickly on the ground. Despite being barely alive, my mother still knelt and prayed fervently to the gods for salvation. My sister, not giving up, made a video call to me, and unexpectedly, I answered this time. I set the video to mute mode and performed an immersive mukbang in front of the camera. As I opened a can of beer, the crisp popping sound made my whole family salivate. On the other side of the screen, when I picked up a plump chicken claw, I saw their mouths drool with hunger. Between bites of snail noodles and sips of pineapple beer, I ate until I was satisfied, then turned the sound back on. With hungry eyes glowing, my family crowded the camera, each more eager than the last, a far cry from their previous enslaving demeanor. My sister pleaded, "Sister, I've never hit you. It was all Mom's abuse. I always saw you as my closest person. I was too young and brainwashed by Mom." "Sister, we are blood sisters," my father chimed in. Yes, it's all your mother's doing. Dad hurts seeing you suffer too. It's all that beast of a mother, doing these things, seeing them turn against each other." My mother didn't dare strike my father but instead slapped my sister hard across the face before squeezing into the camera's view. "My dear daughter, everything I did was for your good. To hit is to love, to scold is to care. Without me, how could you have turned out so well? We are mother and daughter. Our bones may break but our tendons remain connected. Everything I did was for you. Your sister has bullied you too. I just avenged you. My precious daughter, please think of a way to save me. I will pray for your blessing every day." Watching their desperate reversals and respectful attitudes, I kindly smiled. I said, "After all, we are family. How could I bear to let everyone starve? I have a habit of hiding some food in the back of the storage room safe. The combination is my birthday." I hung up the phone with a smile, hoping they would appreciate the carefully selected gift. Upon hearing this, the family grew excited, each frantically searching the abandoned safe in the storage room. After all, they couldn't leave the storage room. Whoever found the supplies first would have a greater chance of survival. Ha, 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 damn, you little wretch, hiding food in the room. Get away from me, all of you. My mother was the first to find the safe, guarding it tightly behind her, fearing someone might steal it, even kicking her favorite daughter to the ground when she approached. "Get lost, you disloyal daughter, trying to steal my food. I spit on you," warily eyeing the other two. She quickly entered the combination, opened the safe door, swarming out of a waist-high safe like dark clouds. A mass of thumb-sized insects aggressively bit at the humans before them. I watched the monitor, my eyes gradually widening. I hadn't expected the lychee stink bug eggs I left behind to be so effective. Not only were they extraordinarily powerful in combat, a single bite would instantly cause the skin to swell and pus to form. Moreover, they emitted a foul odor that could rival a chemical bomb. It might have been the abnormal high temperatures that caused the bug eggs to mutate, hatching an evolved version of the lychee stink bugs that was 10 times more destructive than what was commonly known online. Watching the three people jumping around and covering their mouths to retch, I could almost smell that rancid stench through the screen. The mother at the forefront was quickly enveloped by the insects into a brown cocoon. She screamed in terror and despair, rolling on the ground. Reaching out to the two fleeing from her, she struggled and cried, "Help me, husband, Emma, please save me." Her daughter cried, her face a mess of snot and tears, yet she refused to step forward. "I'm scared, Mom, please get out yourself, I beg you, most of the bugs are on you. If you go out, Dad and I can shut the door and survive." The mother, with only her eyes visible outside the cocoon, stared in disbelief, her voice hoarse as she screamed, "I'm your mother, you beast." Without hesitation, the father directed the insects towards her, saying, "Quit your nonsense, sacrifice yourself for your husband and daughter, what's there to complain about?" He kicked her out of the storage room amidst swatting the insects off himself. Exposed to the intense ultraviolet light, the leechy stink bugs instantly died, and the mother, struggling forward a few steps, also ceased to breathe forever. Her body gradually stiffened, blackened by the sun. Just a step away from the shrine she used to worship daily, it shows that committing too many sins, even gods and Buddhas will not ferry you across. Although most of the insects were killed by the sun, there were still hundreds left in the storage room, suddenly biting people from every corner. As I ate my ice cream, watching the remaining two people frantically trying to ward off the leechy stink bugs, my phone rang next to me. My sister screamed, "What the hell did you leave behind? You need to fix this." I took a sip of pineapple beer and casually said, "Your favorite lychees, but with lychee stink bug eggs, freshly plucked from the tree." I paused, then loudly added, "I think there's a bottle of strong insecticide at home, but where did I put it?" Fear and hatred flashed across my sister's face. "You're doing this for revenge, you wretch." Before she could finish cursing, our father slapped her to the ground. "Apologize to your sister. Ask nicely where the insecticide is. If it weren't for you always bullying your sister at home, would we have ended up in this situation?" He kicked her several times, still not satisfied. "Kneel down and admit your mistakes. If I die today because of you, I'll skin you." I apologize. My sister's cheeks swelled up purple and red, blood on her lips, her hair unkempt like a beggar. She knelt on the ground, kowtowing and begging for mercy. "I was wrong, sister, I was wrong. I won't dare to talk to you like that anymore. Please be magnanimous. Tell us where the insecticide is. The bites are too painful. Sister, you wouldn't want to see me bitten to death, would you?" Sob. My father's face, yellowed and wrinkled, appeared on the camera. "Daughter, look, Dad has avenged you. I've never abused you before. It was always your mom and your sister who did." Rubbing his hands together, he seemed quite pleased. "Now that your mom is dead, and your sister has apologized, dear daughter, you should feel vindicated. Tell Dad where the insecticide is." I stared at his obsequious expression on the phone, finding it both amusing and disgusting. He had never directly participated in abusing me, but as a bystander truly innocent, this man always only cared for his own comfort. As long as he could maintain a respectable facade in front of others, he was happy for my mother and sister to exploit me to the last. Even though he wasn't the mastermind behind my demise, he was certainly an accomplice. For over 20 years, he never once intervened, allowing my mother and sister to enslave and bully me. Now he seeks my forgiveness. Too late. After being reborn, how could I possibly place the insecticide where they could easily access it? I smirked, my gaze shifting between my swollen father and sister. "The insecticide is in the tool shed in the garden. Whoever goes to get it, how you take it, you decide." I quickly hung up the phone after seeing the sudden change in their expressions, taking a long sigh of relief. The toxicity of the mutated lychee bugs is not fatal. A bite won't kill a person. However, the bite site becomes unbearably itchy, swollen, and painful, and with the mutation, it's even harder to bear. You can't die from it, but living becomes excruciatingly painful. This was a snapshot of my life for the first 27 years, this torment of being unable to live well or die freely. I certainly wanted my dearest family to experience thoroughly. In the surveillance, my father and sister were being bitten by swarms of lychee bugs, crying in agony. They tried to escape everywhere, but in a small storage room of less than 10 square meters, where could they possibly go? In the end, both of them looked severely allergic. Swollen with patches of red and purple, their bodies swollen to twice their size, the scratched areas oozing beads of blood, their skin even ulcerating. Unable to bear the pain, my father ordered my sister to fetch insecticide, but having seen what happened to our mother, no one wanted to go out and meet certain death. My sister knelt down on the ground in a deplorable state, begging as she retreated, "Dad, you can't seriously be sending me out there. I'll die of sun exposure, I'm begging you. Dad, I'm still young, I have a future, you're already 1 foot in the grave. Sacrifice yourself for me one last time. I promise to visit your grave every day. Aren't you the one who loves me the most?" My father, dragging her by the hair, shouted, "Nonsense, I don't need your tomb visits. Your mother dying was a blessing. Once I'm out, I'll remarry a younger woman, have a son, and let my son tend my grave. You're nothing." He kicked her out of the storage room, throwing a pot lid for her to use as a sun shield. "Hurry back with it, and I'll open the door, or else die outside and keep your mother company on the road to hell." The pot lid, heated by the sun, instantly burned her hands. My usually delicate sister, in pain, threw the lid away and ran back, pounding on the tightly shut door of the storage room. "Dad, are you really sending me to die? Please, open the door." But no matter how much she knocked, her father, who usually doted on her, was now indifferent. My sister had no choice but to head towards the tool shed under the scorching sun. With each step, her flip-flops melted. With 2 steps, blisters formed on the soles of her feet. By the 10th step, she collapsed, unable to stand. Her skin, blistered and ulcerated, began to stink and ooze pus under the boiling sun. My sister, who in her previous life boasted about her milky skin and ridiculed my thin, rough complexion, died a miserable death. I didn't linger on her image for a second, swiftly turning off the surveillance. The temperature continued to rise, with no end to this apocalyptic heat in sight. Since my mother and sister died outside the storage room, I stopped checking the cameras. Every day, I just watched some shows, exercised a bit, and kept up with domestic and international news. When I thought about the storage room again, it was 3 months later. By then, global temperatures had dropped to around 45 degrees Celsius. And the UV levels had returned to normal, though it was still unbearably hot. At least people could survive outdoors. During a routine check, the property management found my father in our home's storage room, dead among his own excrement, his body decayed beyond recognition, his mouth stuffed full of leechy bugs. I gave up the leases on both villas and swiftly moved into a large flat with a panoramic view of the city. On the first day of moving, I eagerly ordered a box of premium lychees from the supermarket. Biting into one, the subtle sweetness and plump juiciness filled my mouth. Now free from burdens and constraints, I could buy whatever I wanted, live wherever I desired, without constantly fearing being attacked or having my prospects ruined by family slanders. Now, a new life was just beginning. Story 2. As the apocalypse arrived, I was betrayed by a scumbag who pushed me into a horde of zombies. The scumbag's mother said, "You brought this upon yourself by clinging to my son. It's already merciful enough that we haven't devoured you." In the moment I was overwhelmed by zombies, I was reborn. When the apocalypse came, the city turned into ruins, and tens of thousands of zombies swarmed like locusts, bound hand and foot. I watched as pairs of bloody hands pierced my body. Suddenly, the urgent ringing of a bell jolted me awake, and sunlight streamed in through the gaps in the curtains. It was just a dream. And I breathed a sigh of relief, but within seconds, a flood of images surged into my mind. Dark shadows over the city, eerie screams, noisy footsteps, faces rotting away, my body unable to move. I sat up abruptly, clutching the blanket and grabbing my phone from beside the bed. The screen read, August 23, 2022, 10 a.m. How could this be? I clearly remembered being bitten on the neck by a horde of zombies. The last memory being the foul stench of the undead and the excruciating pain of my throat being torn apart. Subconsciously, I touched my neck, smooth and unscathed. I jumped out of bed and pulled open the curtains. The glaring sunlight hit me suddenly. The unusual high temperatures of the past few days had reached 40 degrees. The neighborhood was eerily quiet, with hardly anyone around except for a few delivery personnel moving about below. I gasped for air, trying to calm my racing heart. I had been reborn before the apocalypse began. Initially, my best friend who worked at the hospital called me, advising me to stock up and stay indoors. When I asked if something was wrong, she hesitated and simply told me to do as she said. Sensing the seriousness from her tone, I obediently went to the supermarket and stocked up on food and water, preparing to not leave the house for 3 years. Little did I know, the situation was more terrifying than I imagined. Just 2 hours later, the zombie virus outbreak engulfed the city of over 10 million people, turning it into a hell on earth. My ex-boyfriend Abraham and his mother, knowing I had supplies, drove over in the middle of the night to take me and my supplies back to their place. The supplies meant for my 3-year sustenance, shared with Abraham and his mother, ran out in less than 2 years. When the food was gone, to distract the zombies downstairs, they tied me up and pushed me into the zombie crowd so they could escape to find food. The memory of being bitten by the zombies made me shudder. I never wanted to go through that again. This house was bought while consoling my best friend through a breakup. She was so down that even shopping didn't lift her spirits. Just then, a new building project was distributing flyers. Suddenly, I had an idea. How about we buy a house? Let's buy it together and live together when we're old. How does that sound? My friend was taken aback, clearly tempted by my suggestion. After all, a house is much more reliable than a man. We immediately agreed and paid a deposit. Because my friend was a doctor and worked night shifts, we chose the top-floor apartments to avoid being disturbed during the day. However, this house also became a thorn in the side for Abraham and his mother, who insisted I sell it and use the money to renovate a property in Abraham's name. Naturally, I refused. Since Abraham passed the civil service examination, his family's attitude towards me has done a complete 180-degree turn. With the acquisition of this new house, our relationship has hit rock bottom. Abraham even laid it on the line. Break up if you don't sell the house. Then, he kicked me out of the apartment we rented together. When my best friend found out, she immediately took me in at her place. Thinking of this, I immediately dialed her number. It took a while before she answered the phone, her voice loud and clear. Honey, did you know I've been in the emergency room lately? I asked her. Has your hospital recently admitted any patients with something like rabies? She paused, hesitating before responding. We just admitted one. How did you know? That's not rabies. It's a zombie virus. Anyone bitten will turn into a zombie soon, and there's no cure. I explained. Zombies. Are you joking? She asked incredulously. No, believe me, I've got inside information. You need to catch a flight home immediately, I urged. There was silence for a few seconds before she replied, Okay, I believe you, but my brother just flew in from home today. He might still be on the plane. Go to the airport and wait for him. As soon as he lands, take the next flight home together, I instructed. She pressed on. What about you? Come with us. My best friend's family, living in the Northwest, still included her parents, whereas mine had passed away long ago, leaving me with no ties. My college tuition was even funded by her parents, and although I repaid them as soon as I started working, I still regarded them as my own family. I have other things to handle here, I said, my mind set on avenging past grievances. After ending the call, I calculated all the money I could access. Over the years, I had saved up. And with the recent severance pay from being laid off, it totaled up to 160,000 yuan. This amount was far from sufficient, but it would allow me to buy some essential supplies for now. Our residential area was newly developed, lacking complete amenities, with the nearest supermarket 5 kilometers away. Without delay, I called the supermarket to arrange a home delivery. I ordered 20 bags of flour, 5 bags each of various grains, 20 cans of cooking oil, and 10 boxes each of condiments, white sugar, and brown sugar, along with 200 kilograms each of dried goods like black fungus, shiitake mushrooms, and vermicelli. Additionally, I ordered 10 boxes each of snacks, dried fruit, jerky, sausages, instant noodles, hot and sour noodles, and my favorite, snail noodles, along with canned milk powder, soy milk powder, cereals, coffee, and more soy milk powder. Next on the list were hygiene products, especially sanitary pads. I had all the supermarket stock delivered. Then came the electronics. There was an electronics store nearby. I ordered 4 air conditioners, 3 rice cookers, 6 electric frying pans, 10 electric kettles, 10 induction cookers, and 10 electric blankets. I remembered that gas would be cut off half a month after the apocalypse. Cooking would depend solely on solar power. After the apocalypse, temperatures would soar, with blazing sun every day for a year, followed by a sudden drop and continuous heavy snow for several months. Thus, I also planned to buy several gas cylinders, even a stove and coal. This way, when it was too snowy for solar power, I could use coal for heat and cooking. Just as I hung up, I heard a knock at the door. Peering through the peephole, I saw my best friend and a tall man. Only then did I open the door with relief. She spoke quickly. "This is my brother, Adam." He had just disembarked from the plane when the airport was locked down, and we couldn't leave. It seems the government has realized something was wrong and is trying to prevent the virus from spreading. There's no leaving now. Without delay, I showed them the checklist I had prepared to see if anything was missing. My best friend looked it over for a while, then looked up at me with a deep, somber gaze. Her stare gave me the creeps. I knew she still had many questions, but we both understood that now was not the time for that. Being a wealthy second generation, money wasn't a concern for her, so we decided to continue shopping and organized a detailed division of labor. I went on to purchase supplies, while my best friend reached out to a classmate who worked at a pharmacy to buy medicines. Adam, who specializes in electrical engineering, was tasked with buying a refrigerator, retrofitting the main door, handling the plumbing and electrical systems, and installing a water purifier and solar power units, following online guides. I bought 20 cotton quilts, various clothes for all seasons, several large boxes of underwear, 50 power banks, for drones, high-power binoculars, pepper spray, hemp rope, strong flashlights, and more. I bought everything mentioned online, regardless of whether we would need it or not. Adam had the door replaced with a blast-resistant door similar to those found in bank vaults, and even the glass was switched to bulletproof, from the 23rd floor up to the 28th. Every stairwell entrance had a steel door installed. Another door was installed outside the elevator. By 6 p.m., the supplies I had ordered earlier were gradually delivered. It took 7 or 8 trips with a 4.2-meter truck to get everything. This building had 26 floors, but according to the property management, only we lived above the 20th floor, so if anyone asked, we would just claim to be residents of the 20th floor. By the time we got everything home, it was midnight. I was completely exhausted when I went to bed, and although I thought I would have trouble sleeping, I fell asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow. Early in the morning, just as it was getting light, a sharp scream suddenly rang out from the neighborhood. I got out of bed and walked to the living room. Looking down from the balcony, a woman in pajamas, carrying trash, was knocked down by several frenzied zombies, and other zombies, attracted by the smell of blood, quickly joined in. My best friend, who had also come out, saw this scene and screamed in fright, falling to the floor, her face pale as death. Adam came out of the kitchen, still wearing the little bare apron I had bought, and his face turned pale at the sight. Although I had seen more brutal scenes in the past, this one was still tough to witness. We quietly ate the steamed buns Adam made for breakfast, the mood very somber. The buns were pre-packaged from the supermarket, just needing to be steamed before eating. We were staying at my best friend's house, and since my house across the street wasn't renovated, most of the supplies were stored there, including 7 freezers. While we still had electricity, we needed to eat the perishables in the fridge quickly, as the solar power might not support so many appliances once the power was out. Turning on the TV, every channel was broadcasting emergency notices about an unknown virus spreading, advising everyone to stock up on supplies and stay indoors. Cars in the neighborhood were sporadically leaving, probably in response to government advisories to stock up. Whenever a car left, the zombies roaming around would swarm it, being knocked aside by the speeding vehicle but quickly getting up to chase after it. The atmosphere in the house was tense, and after eating, my best friend and Adam went to call their parents, who had also stocked up on many supplies yesterday and were now safe at home. The supplies delivered last night were still piled up in the room, so we decided to take turns keeping watch while the others sorted and organized the supplies. This continued until the evening when a few cars finally returned. None of us had much appetite. We just ate some self-heating rice. From time to time, the piercing screams of zombies could be heard from downstairs. With that sound, I drifted off to sleep in a daze. Around midnight, a sudden burst of rapid ringing from my cell phone jolted me awake. It was Abraham calling. the apocalypse had just begun, and communications networks were still operational. I steadied myself and answered the call. Liu, why is your building's hallway locked? Come downstairs and open the door for me, he said. Hearing his voice flooded me with a surge of resentment, reviving the agony I felt just before dying in my previous life. I took a deep breath to suppress my emotions and asked, haven't we already broken up? Why are you here? Abraham spoke in a hushed tone. Those were just words said in anger. How could you take them seriously? My mom and I have nothing to eat. The supermarket has been cleared out. Isn't your best friend a doctor? She must have known to stock up on food in advance. He must have seen the door we had installed in the hallway and guessed that I had food supplies, his voice tinged with excitement. Liu, it was my mom's fault before. I'll make her apologize to you, please. Just open the door and let us come up. Holding the phone, I looked out the window down at our building's hallway, which was clear of zombies. Most of them were gathered around a corner of the opposite building, seemingly tearing at something. Through the binoculars, I saw a figure being mauled by zombies, his face unrecognizable. I could only make out a gray t-shirt, the same shirt I had bought for Abraham's stepfather. They were still using the same method to divert the zombies, just like I had in my past life. At that moment, it was as if I was looking at myself. A wave of hatred shook me to my core. My hands clenched the phone so tightly that I could barely hear the voice coming from the other end, only a loud roaring in my ears. I picked up a flower pot from the window and threw it down. The shattering sound attracted the zombies, who swarmed over and quickly blocked the hallway. After that, I heard cursing through the phone. Open the door, you bitch. The zombies are coming. It was Abraham's mother's voice, screaming in agony. Liu, you bitch, just you wait, I'll feed you to the zombies. I couldn't help but laugh in rage. I think you'll be fed to them first. After saying that, I hung up the phone and prepared to return to my room. Turning around, I saw my best friend and Adam standing in the living room watching me. The atmosphere was tense. After a moment of silence, I asked my best friend, do you think I'm too cruel, too terrifying? She looked at me for a long while, then shook her head. I know what kind of person you are. I don't think you're terrifying. She stepped forward and embraced me. Something terrible must have happened for you to act this way towards them. Can you tell me about it? As I looked into the trusting eyes of my best friend and Adam, my heartbeat gradually calmed, and the excruciating pain I felt slowly receded. I told them about my rebirth. After hearing my story, my best friend was so furious she swore loudly, then held me and sobbed uncontrollably. You must have been so scared and in so much pain. Adam's eyes reddened, and without a word, he grabbed an axe and headed out. I quickly stopped him. There are a lot of zombies in the building now. Don't go out. They will attract more zombies with their shouting, and he's been yelling so much that others will soon know we have supplies. I'll get rid of them first. You two stay inside. My best friend and I exchanged glances and said, we'll go with you. To help out, Adam, armed with an axe, led the way as my best friend and I followed closely behind. Clutching our batons and flashlights, we cautiously opened the door to the stairwell and began descending floor by floor. By the time we reached the 23rd floor, we stood before the last door, too apprehensive to open it. Peering through the peephole, we saw a horde of zombies relentlessly slamming against the door of a western apartment on that floor. The door seemed on the verge of collapse but miraculously remained intact, as if something from inside was holding it shut. It appeared that the zombies had made their way inside the apartment. Just dealing with the zombies at the door was headache enough for them, and it seemed unlikely they would be able to cause us any trouble anytime soon. Adam double-checked the door and found it undamaged. However, the potential threat lingered. I knew these people all too well. If they were alive, they would certainly attempt to seize our supplies. The next morning, the eerie shrieks of zombies pierced the pre-dawn silence in the otherwise quiet neighborhood, sending chills through the air. The three of us sat in the living room, too afraid to turn on the lights, quietly observing the scene below through binoculars. The zombies that had flooded our building the previous night were now emerging into the street. However, they did not disperse but instead gathered below our building. Abraham and his group were surely still hiding somewhere inside. But for now, we couldn't spare any attention for them. In my previous life, by the third day of the apocalypse, the temperature had skyrocketed to 50 degrees Celsius. Many who had survived the zombies perished in the severe heat. This time, I was better prepared. I had several fans running since air conditioning consumed too much power. The electricity generated by solar panels was reserved for the several large freezers we relied on, true to my memories. The temperature began to rise from the third day of the apocalypse. Even at 7 p.m., the sun was still glaringly bright in the sky. The bodies of those killed by zombies began to emit a foul stench, causing dizziness and headaches to those who smelled it. My best friend insisted on keeping all doors and windows tightly shut and brewed a pot of herbal tea daily for us to drink. On the sixth day of the apocalypse, the power went out, and the network on our phones was lost, gradually. Flashlights began to flicker throughout the neighborhood as people clung to the hope of electricity being restored, but I knew the power was gone for good. By noon, the temperature had reached 45 degrees Celsius. By then, the zombies had vanished from the streets, seeking refuge in the shadows of the hallways and walls, occasionally emitting chilling shrieks. Over the past few days, we had consumed perishable food items and organized the rest based on their shelf life. Eating only small amounts each day to conserve energy, it was too hot to eat much anyway. To save power, the three of us cleared out a small room to sleep on the floor, allowing us to use just one air conditioner. The neighborhood grew increasingly quiet, sometimes eerily so, especially at night. 40 days into the apocalypse, the temperature remained oppressively high, and the air was filled with a rotting stench. It was hard to tell whether it came from food or corpses. We had not opened the windows in a long time, keeping even the curtains tightly drawn. For lunch, we had cold noodles, a dish Adam had mastered. It was surprisingly well made and felt like a blessing in the extreme heat. In the afternoon, a sudden thunderclap rang out, followed by a torrential downpour that enveloped the city. Soon after, cries of surprise echoed through the neighborhood. I cautiously peeked through a small gap in the curtains and saw several survivors stretching containers out to catch rainwater. My best friend and Adam both breathed sighs of relief, murmuring how fortunate this was, but I alone knew that the crisis was far from over. The high temperatures accelerated the spoilage of food, further depleting our already scarce resources. In desperate times, people could forsake their morals and dignity for a morsel of food. Capable of anything to satisfy their hunger, after the rain, far from cooling down, the weather only grew hotter. Every day, people would lean out of their windows, crying for help, some begging for food, others for medicine. There were also those who couldn't take it anymore and chose to end their lives. In the building opposite, someone jumped from the 18th floor only to be immediately surrounded by zombies upon hitting the ground. Over the following days, more people continued to jump. A sense of despair hung over the entire neighborhood. On the 50th day since the apocalypse began, a small squad of about a dozen people appeared at the foot of our residential building. Their purpose was clear: to search for food. Armed with axes and machetes, they scavenged from building to building, each search yielding significant finds. However, their departures were followed by more people jumping from the buildings. At the rate they were moving, I estimated they would reach our building by noon. The three of us ate our self-heating rice without relish, calculating the odds of them breaking through our door. After eating, I kept watch while my best friend and Adam tinkered with a pile of alcohol, intending to make some weapons. The group piled the scavenged supplies in the middle of the courtyard, guarded by a few individuals, boxes of grain and cooking oil, over 20 boxes of bottled water, and many boxes of compressed biscuits were stacked high. Their initial success boosted their confidence, and they opened several bottles of water, drinking and splashing around, drawing many curious eyes from the windows. Suddenly, the burly leader pulled a man from behind and threw him to the ground. The man's clothes were torn into rags, hanging off him pathetically. As he looked up, the burly leader punched him, knocking his glasses off, clearly highly myopic. The man began flailing his arms, desperately searching for his glasses on the ground. A man with sly-looking eyes grabbed the bespectacled man by the hair on his forehead and jerked his head back, forcing him to face everyone. The surrounding crowd burst into laughter at his miserable state. Suddenly, my friend exclaimed, "The director." She explained that the man with the glasses was the head of the infectious diseases department at their hospital, who had abruptly resigned just before the apocalypse. It now seemed he had been forewarned. No wonder he had survived this long and had stored so much food. It took several trips for a few men to clear out his apartment, and the amassed goods looked quite impressive. the burly man took a megaphone passed to him by an underling and, without concern for attracting zombies, began to shout across the neighborhood, "Listen up, everyone, anyone who joins us will get their share of the food here. Those who volunteer their supplies can join us too. If you don't come forward, and we find you, this will be your fate." With that, he yanked the director forward and kicked him in the stomach. The director, a small man compared to the towering leader, was sent flying into a flower bed, passing out without even making a sound. The group laughed wildly at the sight. "If your home has no food but you know where to find some, share that information, and I will ensure you get a share of the food," continued the leader. With this call, many who had initially hesitated began to open their doors and started moving their belongings downstairs. Even a newlywed couple from the building across, who I thought weren't home since I hadn't seen their windows open since the apocalypse began, shouted from their window, "We have food." 4 men approached their building, and soon several people were seen entering the couple's apartment. They didn't take long to come back down, carrying only a few boxes of water. The group downstairs seemed displeased by the small haul, but since they needed to motivate others, they didn't make a fuss and let the couple put down their supplies before handing each of them a loaf of bread. The couple was visibly relieved. Clutching the bread, he began to eat voraciously. It had been over a month since the apocalypse began, and the intense heat had left many without food. Seeing that there was an opportunity to exchange goods for food, people started emerging from their homes. The crowd in the open space below our apartment building grew larger. I had thought our complex was nearly deserted, but it turned out there were still hundreds of families around. I was focusing through my binoculars when suddenly, from somewhere in our building, a window made a crackling, sizzling sound. Just as I was about to look out, a bad premonition struck me. Then a familiar voice came from below, "There are people here. There's a lot of food upstairs." It was Abraham. He was still alive. Soon, many people started heading towards our building, although there were over a dozen doors blocking their way at the ground floor, making it nearly impossible for them to get up. We weren't taking any chances. We dug out the sticks and batons we had bought earlier. Adam and I cautiously went down a few floors to check things out. Soon, hearing laughter echoing through the hallway, a rough male voice said, "This family has so many doors, they must have a lot of food. Let's break this door down, and we won't have to worry about food anymore." Using our binoculars, we looked down the hallway through the windows. The man with a full beard seemed pleased with the information Abraham provided and casually tossed a moldy piece of bread onto the floor. Abraham hurriedly knelt to pick it up and stuffed it into his mouth without a second thought, causing the others to burst out laughing. However, their laughter didn't last long as they realized all the doors were made of solid steel. After half an hour of smashing and prying with no success, Adam told me to go back while we took turns keeping watch. Back upstairs, my best friend had prepared a meal with braised pork and a side of stir-fried vegetables. Despite the zombies outside and the impending threat, the sight of this hearty meal momentarily took our minds off our worries. The pork was fatty but not greasy, tender and bouncy, and the vegetables, grown on our rooftop, were absolutely free of pollutants. After dinner, my friend brought out a watermelon we had stored before the apocalypse, kept chilled in the fridge. In such hot weather, the cool watermelon was a real treat. Watching Abraham wolfing down the moldy bread below, and then looking at the sweet, juicy watermelon in my hand, made the fruit taste even sweeter. After eating our fill, we continued to watch the scene below. The group struggled with the doors to no avail. Growing increasingly frustrated, the leader kicked Abraham in the chest, causing him to crash into a door behind him, which fell down immediately, releasing a foul odor. A few men walked in hesitantly and soon came out carrying a bucket covered with a woman's coat. When they opened it, it contained smelly pieces of meat and some bones. My friend vomited at the sight, and once she recovered, she said in a heavy voice, "Those are human bones." I had not seen Abraham's mother around and thought she had been ill. It was monstrous. I felt nauseous too. The men probably realized what kind of meat it was, and the bearded leader kicked Abraham in the chest again, shouting, "You even ate your own mother's flesh. Are you still human?" The rest, already frustrated from not being able to open the doors and now disgusted, started beating Abraham until he was barely breathing. I didn't care to watch anymore. He had brought this upon himself. That evening, I continued to watch the group with my binoculars. My friend and Adam took some meat from the fridge, ground it up, and attached it to a drone, which they remotely controlled to fly out, hoping to attract zombies with the meat. After setting this up, we smashed some pig's blood and scattered it in the hallway, then opened all the windows there. Let those flavors waft away. In the afternoon, the corridors started to resonate with the jarring sound of an electric saw. Somehow, a group of people had gotten hold of a saw and began cutting through the doors in the corridor. They only managed to make a small slit after half a day's effort, but the noise they created had already attracted some zombies. Unfazed, they simply sent a few people to clear the zombies away. Soon, a rumbling noise came from outside the compound, sounding like trucks passing by or the muffled thunder before rain. Shortly after, the protective walls of the compound were struck, and within minutes, a large horde of zombies flooded in. The cries and screams from downstairs mixed with the cursing of the group. They might have held off the zombies for a while, but given their weakened state from barely surviving on minimal food, fighting the zombies was impossible. In less than 15 minutes, no living person could be seen. Even Abraham, who had fainted on the ground, was overwhelmed by zombies. The only sound left in the hallway was the frenzied swallowing of the zombies. When the zombies finally dispersed, all that was left on the ground were scraps of clothing and bloodstains. We carried several buckets of water and poured them down the stairs. The blood washed away, and the zombies followed it down. After a few buckets, the corridor was clear. This made the compound even quieter. For months, there was no sound at all. Sometimes, I even doubted that only the three of us were left. We breathed a sigh of relief. In this apocalypse, those who had lost their morals and humanity were actually more terrifying than the zombies. Even after winter began, the weather stayed unusually warm, maintaining temperatures in the 20s. Although it was comfortable, the abnormal high temperatures before warned us that worse weather was to come. Taking advantage of the good weather, we sowed fast-growing vegetables on our rooftop garden, dried them after harvesting, and stored them in bags. Perishables like tomatoes were cooked down into sauce for storage. Adam checked all the water and electricity supplies in the house, especially the wires and pipes connected to the solar panels and the water tank. As long as these were functioning, we could keep surviving here. The temperature didn't drop and it didn't rain once till the new year, but fortunately, our water reservoir was large and we had plenty of bottled water at home. We used it sparingly, and it was enough. Soon, it was the new year, the most desolate one yet. We cut out paper fortunes to decorate the house, got up early to make dumplings and a few dishes, and even fished out a pond fish to make braised carp for our New Year's Eve dinner. After dinner, we watched recorded New Year's Eve galas from previous years on TV. The sounds from the TV dispelled the loneliness of the moment. In the past, we used to criticize the gala for being dull, with people just standing on stage singing, but watching those programs now brought tears to our eyes. Those were actually the best days. A year and 3 months into the apocalypse, the temperature suddenly dropped. It was still in the 20s the day before, but overnight it plummeted below zero and heavy snow began to fall. Within a few hours, thick snow had accumulated everywhere. Excited, the three of us ran to the rooftop to collect snow. Once the snow melted, it would secure our water supply. The snow continued for several days, and the temperature kept dropping. We had harvested all the vegetables from the rooftop and didn't plan to plant more since even indoor temperatures were very low. The snowfall reduced the efficiency of our solar power, and with the limited electricity, we plugged in only one electric blanket. The three of us sat on the bed, wrapped in blankets, playing cards. Since the electricity was insufficient and the temperature low enough, we turned off all the refrigerators. Following an online guide, we built a large ice chest on the rooftop using the snow. We've frozen all the chicken, duck, fish, and meat. At noon, we made a hot pot with the sun-dried vegetables and tomato sauce prepared earlier, which left us all sweating profusely as we ate. Although more than a year has passed, we still have plenty of supplies. The vegetables we grow on the rooftop are almost enough to sustain us. The only significant consumption is of flour and rice. We still have plenty of meat and dried goods left, enough to occasionally enjoy a hearty hot pot to satisfy our cravings. Aside from the boredom of not being able to go out, life is quite comfortable. The third year of the apocalypse, the temperature has stabilized around 0 degrees, and the number of zombies moving around in the community has decreased, with the air becoming fresher and the previously nauseating smell slowly fading. Our food supply is mostly self-sufficient. although the temperature is quite low, the midday sun is still strong, and we have enough electricity. We built a greenhouse on the rooftop, and the vegetables we grow there are enough to keep us fed without worry. The fourth year of the apocalypse. The community's roads have been completely overgrown with weeds, and it's been ages since I've seen anyone around. Even zombies are rare. Grass has even started growing in the cracks of the rocks on the road, reaching up to 1 meter high and gradually covering some of the paths. Once I even saw a rabbit hiding in there. We've been discussing how to use this time to keep ourselves physically fit, as staying indoors for a long time can weaken our immune system. Suddenly, we heard several gunshots in the distance and immediately became alert. The gunshots were close by, seemingly from someone shooting. Looking in the direction of the sounds, we saw two figures speeding in a car from a small path. From this distance, it was hard to see who they were, but they quickly dealt with a few zombies in front of the opposite building and rushed inside. Not long after, they emerged, guarding a woman and a child on each side. I thought we were the only ones left in the community after 3 years. How had these people survived, even avoiding the search party from 2 years ago? The two people left the community with the woman and child without lingering, seemingly there to pick them up. It seems that a leader's family members also lived in this community, as mentioned by the salesperson when buying the house. It appears they were the ones picked up. This suggests that maybe the government hasn't completely collapsed. And there's still hope. The car's engine was loud, and soon a large group of zombies surrounded us from all directions. Perhaps due to a long time without food, the zombies were noticeably slower than when the apocalypse first began, and the people in the car quickly drove away. 2 months later, a drone playing a broadcast flew into the community. The zombie virus vaccine has been developed and is being distributed to communities in phases. Please get vaccinated and wait a while longer. As the government is clearing the zombies from all areas, we will soon restore order. The drone circled the community a few times, dropped a few packages, and then slowly flew away, its sound fading into the distance. We went down to get the vaccines and were about to leave when we suddenly saw about a dozen more people coming out. It turns out that besides us, there were other survivors in our community. This realization truly lifted our spirits. 2 months after getting vaccinated, the government announced that all zombies had been thoroughly eradicated. The moment we stepped out of the door, we cried tears of joy. Once communication was restored, we immediately contacted our best friend's parents. They had been living self-sufficiently in the countryside and were doing very well. For us, this disaster truly ended with that news.